Hello and welcome everyone. Today we are going to continue our session about the Urusov Gambit. So the very sharp opening line after moves e4 and e5, white is avoiding the Petrov defense or all kind of Philidor defense by playing bishop c4. And after black's reacting the most natural here, knight f6, white is going into the direct attack over the center. So white is just challenging black's e5 pawn after d4, but moving e takes d4 is not forcing white to capture the pawn back after queen takes d4. White is going to play here knight f3, allowing black to capture the pawn on e4. Knight takes e4, and this critical position after queen takes d4 exactly we were studying in our previous lesson. And today I would like just to bring you two classical examples from the practice of the world champions, William Stanisław, also Lasker, who Emanuel Lasker played this position against Hermann K. Dansky in the Berlin Simultaneous Exhibition in 1891. And this probably was one of the first serious games which already were recorded, and happily we know that Emanuel Lasker also lost sometimes in the simultaneous exhibition, but this game he lost just very probably strong player, which was Hermann K. Dansky. I would like to show you how this happened. After queen takes d4, Emanuel Lasker decided to play knight f6. Let's check the names, because I'm going to show the game, so it's probably better to have the names. Can you stop for a second? So after queen takes d4, Emanuel Lasker played knight f6, bishop g5, bishop e7, knight c3, short castling, long castling, d6, but after rook h to e1, knight c6 and queen h4, I'm pretty sure that he started to feel here a bit unsure about his position. So let's understand what exactly happened here. So black has almost no square for this bishop. Bishop cannot go to e6, of course, because white is controlling twice this square. Black's bishop cannot go to g4. Why? So because this bishop could become unprotected after we get rid of its only defender, knight on f6, after bishop takes f6. So bishop takes f6 and the g4 bishop is gone. So why not to go to f5, probably asked Emanuel Lasker. So in the same time bishop is ready to go to g6 and to support the cementing the black's king side. Indeed, white is still keeping very unpleasant initiative. Despite the fact white is a pawn down, black has almost no useful moves. After queen f4, bishop g6 and g4, white is now intending h4 and h5 to arrest this bishop on g6. Knight a5. trying to get rid of this powerful bishop on c4. Even in that position, Kidansky decided to exchange the bishops. Played bishop d3, increasing the pressure over the center squares. So now, in case of bishop takes d3, rook takes d3, black's position is still very unpleasant. White is intending, let's say, rook d to e3, pressing the black's bishop on e7. Also, after bishop takes f6, and knight d5, black hardly ever could solve problems. So, after bishop d3, Lasker decided to play queen d7. But look what happened now. Bishop takes f6. By getting rid of the knight on f6, white is obtaining the great outpost for its knight on d5. Bishop takes f6. And now knight came to d5. White is intending not only knight takes f6, but the most dangerous, white is intending queen takes f6. In case of g takes f6, knight takes f6, and knight takes d7, white is just winning a piece with no compensation. So black almost forced to play bishop d8. Another great move came from Herman Kidansky. Bishop f5. Bishop takes f5. G takes f5. Of course, white is not trading queens, but opens the g file. So white is intending now to play rook g1 and start the kingside attack. Pay attention where all the pieces of the world champion are situated. Far away from the center. White's rooks controlling the most important squares. And just a move away from rook g1 and starts all kind of sacrifices on g7, on f6. Black's position very unpleasant. So Lasker decided to play f6, trying to cover the g7 pawn. So now in case of rook g1, black always could cover the 7th rank after rook f7. And only then black is intending to send away white's knight from d5 after c6. So now white is changing its plan. h4, b5, knight d4. So white has quite great, quite nice outpost on e6 for its knight. So we are bringing the knight to this key square. Knight c4. Queen e4, avoiding knight e5 because f4. At the same time, look at that. Black is hanging rook on a8, rook c8, and now we can realize that Lasker really played against a strong player. In case of knight e6 and rook e8, black still could survive. Look what next move came. Knight c6. Quite unpleasant move to get for the simultaneous exhibition. So black cannot capture this knight because after knight e7 the queen is gone. Black's only move is knight e5, but after knight takes a7, rook a8, Kidansky just performing here the simple combination, knight b6, freeing the diagonal for the queen. After c takes b6, queen takes a8, queen takes e5, queen d5 check, king h8, and queen takes d6, queen f4 check, and king b1. He decided to call it a day. Why? Because black's only chance here in this position is to play something like rook g8, but in that case white is coming with the last queen sacrifice, queen takes d8, and this is a mating sacrifice. So because Black cannot accept it. After rook takes d8 and rook takes d8, this is a checkmate. So, Berlin simultaneous exhibition of Emanuel Lasker, and he's losing game against Herman Kejdansky, and probably this after that game, the Urusov Gambit become more and more popular. Second game, which I would like to show you, was played already 6 years later in Vienna between Fendrich and Steinitz. So Wilhelm Steinitz just lost the championship match against Emanuel Lasker, and he decided just to check his form before his shape before the next tournament, and he decided to check his defensive skills in the game against Fendrich. Let's look at the game. e4, e5, bishop c4, knight f6, d4, e takes d4, knight f3, knight takes e4, queen takes d4. So in that position we are looking knight f6, knight e6. Also black can play knight c5. Indeed, that position is also quite dangerous for black, because white immediately could play bishop g5. After f6 and bishop e3, black's king cannot castle short side anymore. White is gaining very strong attack after c6, knight c3, d5, long castling, bishop e7, and queen h4. So very typical move, queen h4. Opening the file and ready white to perform any sacrifice. Knight takes d5 or bishop takes d5. Black in the very dangerous position. Clear that short castling will be made by knight takes d5, c takes d5, rook takes d5, and black is lost already. Going to lose a queen. At the same time, if black is playing something like knight bd7, once again after knight takes d5, c takes d5, white is ruining black's position. Check, g6, queen takes d5 and threats queen f7 check, threats rook e1, threats bishop takes c5. Just almost impossible to protect this position. White is having just decisive development advantage. So, after long analysis, all came to conclusion that the only chance for black to hold this position is to play knight f6, bishop g5, bishop e7, knight c3. Despite the fact that white is getting here much better development, black is having no weaknesses. That's why Steinitz probably decided to test this position. Why black is getting so much troubles when we just pawn up and no weaknesses in my position. c6. It's quite serious improvement from the Lasker's game. So Lasker played knight c6 or d6, and white immediately brings the queen to h4. Long cast and rook comes to e1, etc. So in that case, quite unpleasant initiative. c6, black is intending to push pawn to d5, lock the diagonal for the light square bishop. Only then maybe to bring the bishop to e6. Then maybe to go with knight to d7, complete the development on the queen side, and even consider the long castling. So, of course, white is continue the standard way, long castling. d5. Pay attention that black is intending d takes c4. Indeed, white still can perform move rook h to e1, pinning the bishop and protecting the bishop on c4. After d takes c4, d takes c4 move, of course, is a very bad blunder. After queen takes d8, so here is a checkmate. Bishop e6. The strongest continuation. Black is completing the development of its queen side. Here already white is having a few opportunities. So one opportunity is to play queen h4 with the idea to bring the knight to d4 and to attack the bishop on e6. So we still don't know yet where to move this bishop from c4. White is having a lot of very interesting opportunities how to continue the pressure in the center. So after bishop e6, Fendrich played immediately bishop d3. Queen a5 and king b1. Today already we know that the best continuation in this position, when white is having so huge concentration of all pieces in the center, is move bishop f5, recommended by Paul Keres, one of the greatest chess players of the last century. So the idea behind this move that black almost cannot play bishop takes f5. After bishop f6, g takes f6, and queen takes f6, white is winning immediately. Or black is losing the rook on h8, or the queen takes e7, checkmate. Indeed, Stenitz's opponent was not so familiar with this tactical surprising move bishop f5, and he played standard move king b1, just simple prophylactic against any possible checks over the c1 g5 diagonal. Knight bd7, knight e5. Here Stenitz had to capture knight takes e5, but he decided to attack the queen after c6 and c5. Queen h4, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, and finally, I believe that Stenitz saw everything so nice. No need to be scared of white's attack anymore, so he decided to play long castling. Looks very good move. After bishop d2, white start to intend knight takes d5. And black decided to go with the queen to c7, attacking white's rook on e5. Suddenly, instead of going away with the rook, white played knight b5. So Stenitz decided, okay, very good. My opponent sacrificed me the rook. Why not? To capture. Look what happened now. Bishop f4. Queen h5. Stenitz, I believe, was already waiting for resignation from his opponent when the last come with knight takes a7 check, and after king d7, and more surprising move probably in the Stanis chess career, bishop b5. Suddenly, only now, Stanis realized that this check is the last check in the game, and this is a checkmate. So the greatest first world champion, William Stanis, lost in the Urusov Gambit in just 19 moves by obtaining the checkmate. Can you imagine? So once again, we can see that even with this interesting Gambit opening line, not just you can beat the beginner player or amateur player, but also the world champion. So I would like now to give you some explanation what exactly is the critical position of all this line. And after e4, e5 was bishop c4, knight f6, and d4, e takes d4, knight f3. Black can capture on e4, but so many players decided, why shall I go to this deep water of the Urusov Gambit when I just can simply continue developing my pieces, and after knight c6 transpose the game into normal position of the two knights defense. So after knight c6, let's say, and short castling, black can play bishop c5, which leads to the extremely sharp position of Max Lange attack. Also, black could go after short castling with the move knight takes e4, which leads to the classical exchange variation of the two knights defense, and also we can study it in our next sessions. So here after rook e1, black is not losing this knight on d5 but playing d5, and white is having just brilliant combination how to win back the material. Pay attention, bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, knight c3, and at the same time all black pieces, knight on c3 and pawn on d4, completely pinned. So black has to give away this knight on e4, and white is getting interesting compensation for the sacrificed pawn. So this knight c6 move become one of the most natural continuation. Indeed, there is no refutation of the move knight takes e4 yet. So after knight takes e4 and queen takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, bishop e7, bishop g5. So best for black, of course, is to play c6 after long castling, and d5. White plays, of course, rook e1, what we studied. Bishop e6, and after bishop d3. So here is the most important position probably of the Urusov Gambit, and here many players and commentators were trying to improve position also from black's point of view, from white's point of view. Even Anatoly Karpov played this position with his black pieces. Not talking about the other strong players. So today, instead of move which was played by William Stanis, queen a5, knight bd7 is the main recommendation of the theory. So black is getting some development. So the last piece coming into the game, and then we have to decide where to move our queen, to b6, to c7, to a5. White usually plays in this position queen h4, prevent black from castling short side. What would happen in case of castling? Not so difficult to find. Look at that. Bishop on e7, only protected by black's queen on d8. So destroying the black's position on the king side. At the same time, this check forces black to capture on h7. So this destruction leads to the material loses for black after bishop takes e7. Black is going to lose the rook on f8. So short castling not possible. It means that black has to start some actions in the center. Why? Because we have no time for moving the queen somewhere. Let's say after queen a5, white maybe can play knight d4, continues on f4 and f5, at the same time attacking the bishop on e6. Position quite unpleasant for black. So let's say Anatoly Karpov played here c5. After knight e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, it's still far from calling this position okay for black. Because once again, black cannot castle short side because of bishop takes f6. And queen takes h7 with a checkmate. At the same time, white is intending bishop b5 check. After d4, white is not forced to move the knight yet. After f4, and once again white is intending f4, e5, trying to increase the pressure over the e file. Let's say d takes c4, d takes c3 definitely will be met by bishop b5 check, and white is winning the full queen. What else? Karpov played knight d7. Indeed, after bishop b5, bishop takes g5, f takes g5, queen c7, bishop takes d7 check, king takes d7, and queen e4. White is having very unpleasant pressure. Threats knight d5, threats knight b5 with additional sacrifice on d4. Black's king is still in the center, and white keeping quite unpleasant initiative. All the pieces are working. White is having complete domination in the center. If instead of c5, black is trying to play knight c5, also we can continue here knight d4 with additional threat f4 and f5. Everywhere white is keeping quite serious positional pressure. Let's say knight takes d3, rook takes d3, queen d7 could be met by rook d to e3, and black losing the pawn when white is still keeping quite unpleasant threats over the black's king. So from all this game we can understand that it's not so simple for black to play in the Urusov Gambit. At the last, I would like to show you one more game between Nikolai Tereshchenko and George Rotlevy, which was played in Russian tournament in St. Petersburg, 1909, just almost 100 years ago. Let me change the names, please. So after queen takes d4, knight f6, white played knight c3, and instead of most natural and most studied move, bishop e7, black immediately played knight c6, attacking white's queen on d4. Queen h4, bishop e7, bishop g5. So all development white is doing according to the setup we were studying. So queen is coming to h4, bishop comes to g5, white is ready for long castling. d5, long castling, bishop e6, rook h to e1. So pay attention that black is trying to play this position without castling its king. Unfortunately, this strategy cannot be so successful. h6. White already could move the knight maybe on e5, or immediately we can consider moves like knight takes d5 with a huge attack for white. Indeed, look what happened in the game. Bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, and queen h5. So white intending already knight takes d5, bishop takes d5. But the most dangerous that white is intending rook takes e6. Check. All this happened because black's king is still in the center. So black had to play immediately here short castling. Indeed, after knight takes d5, it's not a question who is better. White is definitely better. Getting back the material and still with the dominated position of the rooks, white is having clear advantage. Indeed, Rotlevi decided to get rid of white's knight on c3, played bishop takes c3. Unfortunately, game finished very, very fast. Rook takes e6 check, king f8, rook takes d5, queen c8. So white is controlling all the squares in the center and continue. Rook takes c6. So with each move, white is capturing or checking the opponent's pieces. Now, black cannot capture b takes c6 because rook d8 and queen takes f7 check is coming. So after rook takes c6, Rotlevi played g6. Rook takes g6. F takes g6. Queen takes g6. White is having now exchange down, but ugly position of black's king on f8 is just, of course, most important factor. Queen e8 check, rook f5, king e7, one more check, and do the inevitable mate after rook d5, queen d7, and queen takes d7. Rotlevi immediately resigned. And once again, we see the most important ideas we studied regarding the Urusov Gambit. So with these two lectures about this interesting opening line, I just like to show you the main ideas from White's point of view. How we are developing our initiative, what kind of compensation do we have for the sacrificed pawn, and what are the typical ideas in all Gambit lines we already studied. Rapid development, taking the initiative, trying to control the center, getting open files and open diagonal for your pieces, and very fast going into the attack, finding the right targets and winning the game. Thanks everybody for watching, and see you next week. Bye.